Women's soccer is exploding, black fandom is surging, and the US soccer map is being redrawn. Today we're talking pathways, culture, and how brands can authentically invest on and off the pitch. Welcome back to the new mainstream. I'm Mario Carrasco. This show is about building for the America we actually live in, diverse, multilingual, and culture forward. Today, excited to be joined by Patrick Rose, who leads Black Star and cultural marketing at For Soccer. Patrick and his team are creating real pathways for Black players and fans while advising leagues, teams, and brands on how to grow the game with authenticity. Patrick, welcome to the New Mainstream podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mario. Cool to be on. Looking forward to it.
I've mentioned to potential guests about having you on and mentioned a couple of the stats we had in our pre-meeting, so I'm really excited to have you on. You've had a great career. Your career sits at the intersection of sports, culture, and growth. Give us a through line from your time at Howard, IBM, ESPN, and now Black Star. Would like to get kind of a sense of your career journey.
Yeah, definitely. So, for me, like as you mentioned, I went to Howard University for undergrad, and I studied computer information systems while I was there, which was in our school of business. So it was essentially a mix of business courses and tech courses that I took, and then also I was a student athlete, so I played on the men's soccer team. So, sports have always been a big part of my life. Like playing basketball and soccer, and definitely soccer took off for me. As far as it being my sport of interest and being able to play that at the D1 level for soccer. But when I was graduating, was just really looking for an opportunity to take the things I learned in school to apply it. And I guess it's a workforce and opportunity that was kind of diverse since I didn't know specifically where I wanted to land, but I knew like going into consulting could give me just a wide breadth of opportunities in terms of learning about business, relationships, strategy, technology, and I was able to get a lot of those like great skill sets at IBM. And at the time, they had a leadership and development program that I was able to start in. So I did that 2-year program. Then from there, just kind of grew at IBM for the next, I guess in total 6 years. But while I was there, I always knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to some way, somehow go to get my MBA to really just kind of hone in my business skills business skills a little more. And I guess at the year, maybe 3 or 4 mark while I was at IBM, I just really just got a sense that I wanted to do something different with my career. Like I love the skills that I was able to develop in terms of just the consulting toolkit that you get, but also just the subject matter from what I was doing with different clients in the public sector and healthcare just really wasn't super exciting to me. So I did a little soul searching and really just landed on sports as being something that I was always passionate about. I gave a lot of my life to it as an athlete, and I'd even sought out like a couple different sports related projects at IBM to kind of test the waters and see like what that looks like in a working environment. Just really was a place of interest for me. So I decided to get my MBA, and then with the goal to really make that transition from the consulting space to the sports space. So from IBM, I went to MIT to get my MBA, and while I was there, I was able to really kind of hone in on just industry. Did a lot of networking, did a lot of personal research and internships. Spent a little bit of time at ESPN, which is a super cool experience on their corporate strategy team. Really gave me, I guess, a really download into just the whole sports industry as a whole. And then also was very involved in our MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference while I was in school. So I was definitely went all in on sports in grad school. And then when I was looking for an opportunity, I was definitely entertaining the ESPN opportunity, some other soccer and sports related opportunities. But then I had heard about this company that I just started while I was in school called For Soccer that was really looking to invest and grow the game in a cool and unique way. So I was doing some research at MIT, really focused on the growth of the game within Black communities, both on and off the field, like from a participation lens, but also a cultural lens. And it just so happened that For Soccer had a desire to really build a program and a brand around that. So it just ended up being great timing where I was able to take research that I was doing in real time and really kind of help For Soccer build out what Black Star is today. So kind of transition as a school project turned into like a career opportunity in a really cool way. So that's kind of my pathway from Howard to where I am now at For Soccer.
That's awesome. And I've had a couple of D1 athletes on the podcast before. None, interestingly, that have worked in sports. And I want to dive into your work at Force Soccer, but before you get into that, I mean, I'm a big fan of sports. I didn't play D1 though, but I know how difficult it is to play at that level. Um, and obviously, your sports background is a plus when now that you're working in sports. But like, how is that
Mhm.
transition? Like competing at that level to like getting your MBA, like channeling that energy. It's like similar in terms of competitiveness, but very different. So I'm just like curious, like
Yeah.
how do you go for that? Is it a mind shift? Like what's that transition like?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would say for me, like I've always been like someone that was definitely just focused overall in terms of having discipline and really working hard. I learned a lot of those things through sports in terms of leadership skills, communication skills, working within teams. So I think a lot of those things are very applicable when you think about MBA programs. Like almost all your work is in like team atmospheres. They're doing a lot of case studies. There definitely is a leadership component as well. So I think I was able to kind of use a lot of the skills that I just kind of developed as an athlete over the years. And those were helpful in terms of making that transition for grad school. But I think also just having a this academic focus as well. Like being an athlete, especially in undergrad, it's a very, very big time commitment. It's almost like you're working a full time job and going to school at the same time. So I think time management was a thing that I learned a lot. And while I was in undergrad, I definitely did pretty well. But I just because I was just doing too much, or not doing too much, doing so much, I just never felt like I had just a whole lot of time to kind of dive in on a particular subject or project. So I think getting my MBA, while I was obviously in school, I really got opportunity to kind of dive in more to the school experience, but also just the academic and networking opportunities. So I think all those things that I learned as an athlete were definitely applicable. And I think just being able to channel that energy, having a little more time to really kind of develop and hone in things is kind of how I would describe it. But it's definitely a lot of synergies, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. So I also went to grad school, business school at Marshall at USC, and a couple of guys that were on the football team at USC specifically, and they would be like echoing the same thing, just being so grateful to have time, like
Hmm.
not having to go to the gym before class in
Yeah.
school and then go to practice after, you know? So like that's
Hmm.
yeah. So kudos to you for doing that in undergrad.
I appreciate it.
So, so yeah, so you've experienced the kind of US soccer, firsthand as a D1 athlete. And I'm curious like what opportunities did you see? What problems did you see in US soccer that for soccer that's developed now you're leading Black Star and within for soccer was designed to solve? Like, can you share some of the things that attracted you in terms of being able to have an impact in U.S. soccer?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of U.S. soccer and just even my experience, like as I mentioned, like I was a two sport athlete growing up, so I played basketball at a decently high level, like through high school, AAU, and all those types of things. But also playing soccer at a high level, like from club to high school to college. So, like being in, I guess for example, being in my neighborhood growing up, similar demographics. Like I go to basketball practice, it's just all people from black and brown communities. I go to soccer practice. I'm basically like kind of the only black kid on the team. So there's definitely a just a big difference culturally as far as like how those sports have grown up in the United States. When you think about basketball, you think about accessibility. Anyone can play. All you need is a ball, and people from all communities are playing the game. And specifically, the college and NBA game, it definitely has a very large percentage of black players playing the game. And soccer is very similar in terms of only needing a ball. It's the biggest sport globally, the most diverse sport, but just in America, it's just very suburban in how it's grown, especially if you want to play at the high levels. The club teams, for the most part, a lot of them are located in suburban environments where kids from inner cities or just areas that don't have like strong soccer programs have to travel 30 minutes, hour plus to actually play on these teams. So it's because it's the game has been so suburban. Just economically, you see those differences in terms of the makeup of a lot of the teams. So I think for that, that's probably been I guess one thing that I always just had a question in the back of my mind in terms of like just why weren't more black kids playing? Why was I the only one or two on my teams all the way growing up until I got to college? Just because by background, like I'm Jamaican, so like my parents, that's kind of where I got the love of the game from growing up and kind of seeing how the game was big there, it's big globally, but just in America, it's just a totally different type of culture around the game. So knowing and having that exposure, that was just a question I always had as far as like, why am I the only one? Why do I go to basketball practice and it's super different from where I'm playing soccer? And it's a very fun sport. People would probably love it, but they just don't have that access and exposure. So that was probably the number one question I had in terms of thinking through the representation piece in terms of why aren't there more of us playing? Why aren't there more black coaches, black owners? Just even from the marketing standpoint, why isn't there more representation of us in different spaces in the game? Just given how global and diverse the sport is when you think about it at a macro level. So I would say that's probably like the number one question I had in my mind in terms of what can we do to kind of shift the narrative, but also kind of increase the representation at the same time.
Yeah, and I love those type of insights because everything that you're saying just makes sense. Where it's like, yeah, like you talk about suburban environments versus urban environments. Um,
Hmm.
you talk about just the infrastructure in terms of how our playgrounds are set up in both of those environments, right? Um, yeah, that totally makes sense. And I had a question here: is this what you mean by pathways, like pathways to the game, like bridging people that are in an urban environment and maybe not necessarily exposed to that, or or are these pathways you're talking about something different?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a part of it. I mean, pathways is and could be very broad. When you think about it from like a both a player and a fan perspective, is just two different journeys. But at the same time, it's kind of holistically, how do you just make the game more welcoming, more culturally relevant? Just even how do you make it cool and just really something that we want to be a part of versus something that is kind of other and just kind of not tangible. Because when you think about a sport like golf or tennis or swimming, soccer kind of has had similar positioning in terms of just being a sport that's only for those that have the access and the money to play when it really shouldn't, it really should be the other way around. So I think that's creating a pathway in terms of one, how do you get the introduction to the game, whether it's as a player, how do you get people to just fall in love with it? Because I think once you have that initial exposure, the game sells itself. It's not like you have to specifically do specific things to get black people to love the game. It's more so just how do you increase the access to those entry points at every level is kind of like how I think about pathways.
Yeah, and one stat you shared with me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you mentioned that black fans are the fastest growing fans in terms of U.S. soccer. And it's
Hmm.
accelerating. We're starting to see it in music, fashion, creators, HBCU culture, and then tying it to the broader kind of black diaspora globally. I mean, some of the top players of the world in the world. Um, it's a growth driver. Like, so during your time from getting into the game to now, like what has changed?
Hmm.
What are some structural differences that have gotten both fans and players to start driving this growth in the US? Black fans and
Yeah.
players.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think even just to back up, I would say that just in general, like the soccer's growth trajectory in the US is still like relatively pretty young. When you think about the sport where it is versus other nations that have just a bigger and longer history. We've only had Major League Soccer, which is just the leading men's league for around 30 or so years, 25 to 30 years in terms of when it started, which was right after that last, I believe, 94 World Cup. That was actually here. So I think just in terms of the time that's been able to grow, you're able to have generations of kids growing up where maybe their parents played, or maybe they have just people in the life that are playing more and more just because of the exposure. And the investment has had time to grow. So I think time is definitely one component in terms of the sport and its growth. So that's one thing for sure. But I think also just even thinking about just the changing demographics of the U.S. I know there's just a lot of stats around whether it's either 2040 or 2060, we're going to be a majority minority nation. So obviously that's driven a lot by the Hispanic community, and definitely you have a lot of stats in terms of populations rising in Black communities as well. So I think because there are more of us just in the nation overall, and the exposure is coming and it's becoming more prominent. That's just another, I guess, driver of convergence of those two worlds. When you think about culture and just the way that the game is perceived, because soccer is a lot more accessible. I remember growing up, you could hardly find the game on TV. You had to like search all these random Twitter links or like find some illegal streams to kind of watch what's going on with Champions League or whatever. But now the US probably has like the most access to like the top leagues, whether it's Champions League, whether it's Premier League. You can get stuff on Paramount Plus, on Peacock, on whatever streaming channel there is. So I think the media aspect has definitely been a pretty huge driver, because just probably 10, 15 years ago, you'd be hard pressed to find a game. But now we have access to games all around the world. So I think it's for sure a combination of things, but I think for sure like the time, access to media, representation, and having even more representation on a national team growing up is just a lot of different things that are causing that momentum. I think when I think about also just the younger generations, like they're probably the most exposed to soccer. When you like, I know there's a lot of polls around for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like soccer is a top three sport in those younger demographics, just because the sport has kind of grown up with them and they have a history in it more so than their predecessors. So I think that's another thing too that's kind of driving the growth in terms of just the younger energy that's being introduced to kids at a younger age, just because there's more infrastructure with media, with the leagues, with even infrastructure, fields, etc. There's a lot more that people have to work with now than they did 10 to 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about that. It's only been 30 years, 94. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, what? Yeah, and I think about MLS. I mean, being here in Los Angeles, I feel like obviously it started with Galaxy and Beckham was a big deal. But now with LAFC, it feels like a whole other
Hmm.
level of fandom that we have in the city, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, I think even those two teams, right? I think Galaxy was probably like 90s. Um,
Hmm.
you see the growth between in one DMA, how like a team like LAFC, maybe I'm biased, but it feels like it's just has overshadowed, Galaxy, kind of the OG team here.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair in terms of at least they're just their fan supporters. Because I remember going to one LAFC game. It might have been 2 years ago, but just they've really done just a really great job in terms of just galvanizing, building fans, authentically tapping in with the Hispanic communities, tapping in with people that really have already had that love for the game and really have kind of just brought an environment that they feel more welcome to. I think also probably the location helps in terms of LAFC being more centrally located versus the Galaxy, which is out in Carson. But at the same time, I think they've done a really great job of building that fan community. And you see similar things when you think about Atlanta United tapping into the community, building their fan supporter groups. So I think a lot of these, I guess you can call it second generation or newer MLS teams, have been able to really sometimes grow just, I guess, quicker and more resident fan bases, just kind of how they've built things versus some of the more historic teams. So it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, I think you mentioned Atlanta, how they're tapping into the community. I think one thing both of them have done is like learning about the community, what drives them,
Hmm.
um, how they're made up culturally. From your perspective, like what turns like a casual fan, someone that maybe they have Paramount Plus and they're like, oh, okay, Messi's playing, let me check this out, to someone that's engaging, like watching it like football, basketball, baseball, like what turns a casual fan into a season long soccer MLS fan?
Yeah, it's a good question as well. I wouldn't say there's one answer. I think there's, I guess when we go back to pathways, there's just different ways that people engage in the game. I think one of the, I guess, more tangible ways is really just kind of going to a game in person. Because if you're watching on TV, I know oftentimes soccer gets criticism of being boring, but say you're a general sports fan, never been to a game, you go to LAFC game, you see just the fans going crazy. You see the music, you see just the culture around it. You just become just a fan of that. Like it's a very fun game experience. To see some of the world superstars coming and playing in MLS, playing in NWSL and some of the other leagues also brings just a lot of I guess cool factors to what's going on. So I think actually going to a game in person and kind of having the game sell itself to you. That's one avenue, like actually playing the game. I know even some adults, they may have played it when they were younger. They start to pick up soccer again, maybe playing in a co-ed league, and you just kind of fall in love with just the gameplay of being out on the field. So that's another avenue. Gaming, video gaming. There's just so many different ways that you can discover the game, but I think nothing really replaces that in-game experience and seeing fans going crazy, seeing the culture around it, and just seeing stadiums filled too. I know MLS gets a lot of flack for having smaller stadiums, but at the same time, if you go to a game, it really overall, I think even NWSL two has been having fans at the same level as NBA games. So the fandom is for sure there, and I think experiencing that in person is probably the best way, at least for me. But people kind of find it in a way, whether it's the fashion around the game, maybe your favorite artist is like wearing some collab that AC Milan did or whatever it could be. There's just a lot of different ways that people are discovering it, and I think it's really cool to see that it's not just one way. It's not like a monolithic fan experience, and you're really kind of having these different avenues coming in. So yeah.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I didn't become a fan of MLS till I went to an LAFC game, and
Hmm.
actually, I went because we did like in business school. I mean, you know, USC is right next to BMO Stadium, so we like went and like did a case study or whatever. So I saw the stadium, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I gotta go watch a game. So I brought my
Hmm.
family to watch a game, and I was like, wow, this is one of the best Los Angeles sports experience I've ever had. And I'm like a lifelong Laker fan. I've been to Crypto. I've been to Dodger Stadium, of course. But LAFC was just a different energy,
Yeah.
and also just really family friendly, which was really cool. So yeah, I agree with you. That was like that. But you mentioned other pathways like gaming. That's super
Yeah.
interesting. Like I would imagine that's driving a lot of interest for younger generations, right? Like you're playing a
Hmm.
video game, you're like, you know what? Let me go check out these people in person, right? That's another
Hmm.
way.
Yeah, because even on that point, I remember reading. I think MLS had kind of released some stats around like some of their biggest drivers of fandom. This was years ago, but they did mention like just FIFA as being that growth driver, and it's even having friends that are sports fan have never played the game, but they just love playing FIFA. So I think that's just because you are able to. Obviously, you're playing the game, but you're also learning about the different countries, the players. It's kind of an educational thing as well, where you really get that understanding of the game, and it kind of makes you a fan of actually seeing the real thing in person. So yeah, there's, as you mentioned, a lot of different ways into it.
Yeah, and one thing I think that's pretty cool about soccer in the U.S. and maybe it is globally is how big of a draw the women's game is. I mean, especially
Hmm.
in the U.S., right? I mean, we have one of the U.S. has one of the best teams in the world. Um, yeah, can you talk a little bit about um, how that plays into fandom and maybe people that pathway coming into women's soccer and you know watching men's soccer or I guess it's pretty unique in that respect of like they're both very high level, very popular teams. I mean, do you find at First Soccer that people are a fan of both games? Because I feel like that, you know, in the U.S., that it's getting there for other sports. But I feel
Hmm.
like soccer is maybe one of the leaders in terms of the popularity and impact of the women's game on fandom in general.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I know the women's game, just in general, whether it's soccer or just other sports, they're really having just a lot of momentum, which is great to see. And I think just as Americans, like we just love winners. So like whether it's basketball, football, whatever, we're always gonna get behind a winning team. And lucky for us, our women's team has been historically just the most dominant team at the international level in terms of the World Cups, Olympics that they won. So I think because of that, we've had a head start in terms of just the women, U.S. women being just a preeminent force in the overall game. So because we have a winning team, because we have great players, it's a draw because of that. But I think also it's just a different experience. Also, I think there's a more communal atmosphere when you think about women's sports and going to a game. When you like, I guess compare, I guess women's sports social media channels versus others. It's just there's not as much adversity, people saying crazy things. There's a lot more, I guess, positive experience. So I think that's also drawing people into it. But I think probably one of the biggest things is just the visibility, just with the different sports rights that have been able to kind of platform the game, whether it's Paramount Plus, whether it's all the different things that they have been able to do in terms of NWSL specifically. The game is just a lot more visible. So I think the visibility has helped. I think that us just that winning mentality history for sure helps, and also just the fact that we have a very like vocal like women's, at least some of the past women have been very vocal in terms of just addressing social issues, really kind of making the way more mainstream when you think about sports rights plus equality, equal pay for women. They really have been trailblazers and culturally in terms of I guess how they interact with the world outside of the game. So there's just a lot of unique things that the women's game has going for it, and I think all those things really like play a part into just why our women's team has been a big draw for people. It's cool to see in terms of just rising player salaries, more NWSL teams being started year by year, and just even just overall investment to the space because there was a time when people didn't really pay attention to it. They didn't think it was something that was important, but now they're actually seeing the financial benefits and just seeing how they're eclipsing ratings for even against men's sports. Like it's just becoming to a place where you just can't ignore it anymore. Because they've always been solid, but now you can actually put some metrics behind it. So I think that's been a driver for stuff on the business side also.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think one thing I know, I feel like in the U.S., I mean, similar, there's a great black representation in terms of women's players, right? I mean, some of the top players. I mean, here at Angel City, I know. I mean, something that's made the news, like Trinity Rodman. I mean, she's like one of the top college prospects. Is there any? Yeah, I mean, do you have any stats or any kind of thoughts on just like that pathway, black women players? Is there kind of similar barriers to what you were talking to earlier, or is that pathway? Yeah, does that pathway have a little bit more history? Is it a little bit more? Is it a little easier for black women players to make it into the sport?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's easier. I think there's even just not even black women, but just like just women in general. There's just a lot more pressures and unique things that girls face when it comes to just participation in sports. Because there's a lot of barriers, whether it's family backgrounds, whether it's cultural things, whether it's body positivity, mental health. There's just a lot of issues that girls face in just becoming a part of sports in general that is still a factor that I know a lot of people are working through to address today. And those things for sure are affecting just the participation of black women in soccer. So when I think about just a lot of the names that you just mentioned, like there's for sure been a big uptick, but for the longest time, the men's side has been just a lot more ahead of them in terms of the representation, in terms of that. So there's definitely challenges. I think the women's game is slightly behind in terms of just the representation piece, but it's becoming, especially the last like probably 3 years, it's been great to see the Trinity Rosmans, the Jaden Shaws, Midge Purse, everyone that's really making a mark. It's becoming a thing where it's really setting a lot of inspiration for like the girls that are coming behind them. Because we recently did a showcase event, and it was really cool to see just how a lot of the players at our event, which were high school players, that had were able to name specific role models that they could point to and shout out. I remember when I was coming up, there was really only 2 or 3 names that I could mention, but these girls were probably like naming off 10 to 15 different types of people, and every girl had their own unique different players. So it's cool to see the growth in it, but I think there's definitely some barriers that just the women athletes face that is not as big as a factor on the men's side. It definitely kind of relates to black women as well.
Yeah, I love that anecdote about the naming your favorite players and just having so many more because I think so much of sports for me and for most people is the stories, like people that you can connect with. And the more representation there is, the more you see yourself in a player, the more you the game, the more likely you're going to want to go onto the field. And that's just really cool to hear. Yeah. So, I mean, here being in Los Angeles, right? Of course, I'm thinking about the next 3 years. We have World Cup coming up. We have the Olympics. Just World Cup is probably the. I mean, not probably. I mean, it is the biggest sporting event in the world. Like,
Hmm.
do you think this is a tipping point for U.S. soccer? Like, in terms of right, we've been talking about the growth numbers. Is this the year where the World Cup being in North America kind of tipped the U.S. to being a soccer country?
Yeah, I really hope it is. I think because we're not only having a World Cup, but as you mentioned, there's going to be an Olympics, and then I believe a 2031 World Cup, Women's World Cup, which will have some games played in the United States as well. Kind of think about it as like the decade of soccer, but this is probably the biggest moment just because historically World Cups on the men's side just bring so much economic drivers for the host countries, but especially on the legacy piece as well. If you think back to the '94 World Cup, like that birthed the MLS. When you think about just all the different things that came as a result of the investment that came into the US, I'm just hoping that there's a big investment into just the overall ecosystem and the places that may need funds the most because there's definitely a lot more infrastructure. There's a lot more things that are here that need continued growth and attention and strategy. So I'm hoping that this is like a big driver to really kind of take us from where we are as a growing nation to being a nation that is like in the top five conversations every year versus us being talented, but maybe may or not like make that. So I think this is going to be a big moment and the impacts are still TBD, but I know there's going to be financial impacts. So there's going to be impacts as far as just a whole new swath of fans that are coming in because with World Cups, typically you have obviously you have diehard fans that are paying attention, but people that have no idea about soccer are going to be tapping in. You're going to have people that are just general people that are wondering like, why are all these people in my country really becoming a part of this as well? I've heard some describe it as I guess describe the World Cup as being 100 different Super Bowls being played, like basically kind of one Super Bowl every day because you're going to have influx of people from different nations. It's going to be a big festival in every one of these host cities. So I think it's going to be a huge moment. And I also don't want us to lose sight of what happens after the World Cup as well, because it's great to have a big moment and big momentum, big viewership, big money coming in, but you for sure need a plan to really take the growth that is realized here and then kind of like take it to the next level to really kind of continue to elevate and grow the game in different ways, whether that's grassroots, whether that's media wise, professionally, the different fan pathways, the different development pathways. I think it's going to do a lot, but we need to be thinking about, I guess, how do we grow from that big moment in the next couple of years after that?
So here's a question that you got me thinking as you were talking. Like, let's play a mental exercise. FIFA has hired you, Patrick Rose, as the soccer czar for the U.S. What are the top three investments you make to grow soccer in the U.S.?
Hmm. It's a good question as well. I would say one thing, just kind of just because I can kind of live every day with the work that we do at Black Star. I think that obviously the Black community is a growing community in this space. I think that there's still undervalued when it like comes to U.S. soccer, when it comes to even how brands are looking at the community. Because although we're not like the biggest in terms of numbers, there's still when you think about folks that are driving culture, just overall, that comes from the Black community. So I think if they were able to really tap in to the community and really engage us in a way that is authentic, it can really do a lot to kind of take the sport from something that gets made fun at or is called just a like a suburban white person sport to being just a sport of choice that people think is cool, that people think is culturally relevant. Because I think that's just still a perception issue that soccer faces in terms of it having the fans that love it, but those that are kind of on the outside looking in, they don't really get it. They still make fun of it in a lot of different ways. So I think from a perception standpoint, if you invest in the Black community, in a way, whether it's pop culture, whether it's the talking heads that are talking about the game, it really will do a lot for just the overall perception of the sport. So I think kind of part culturally, part I guess media in terms of how do you shift that perception. So I would say that's one thing that I want people to pay attention to. Secondly, when I think about just the talent level of the United States, like we're one of the biggest nations, soccer nations, compared to all the other ones. We have 330 million people. But still, and largely, a lot of the people that are playing at the highest levels are coming from the same environments. There's just a lot of undercover talent. What could be black, could be brown, could be people from any different demographic, but the scouting ecosystem is not set up in a way where you can really find all the most talented people unless you're really invested into going into these cities, into these different environments, into these rural communities on a consistent basis because there's so much talent that really gets left behind. I just even remember myself coming up. There were just so many like super talented kids I played against where they were a whole lot better than me, but maybe they didn't have the financial means. Maybe they lived in an area where there was no team for them to play against, and they just really never made any progression. So I think from a talent discovery standpoint, we'd love to see U.S. soccer, the pro leagues, really invest in going into the community versus having things that kind of live outside of it because you're really missing a wide swath of people that don't have access to the current system as it is that you're just not discovering. And that's because we have so much people. There's no way that we shouldn't be a top whatever nation just due to the sheer number of people that we have in the country. So I'll say that's one thing because once you get the talent, that is another driver of fandom because if you have the best team, people want to come out and watch you regardless. So I'll say that's number two. Number three.
You gave us two big ones, so I won't hold you to
Yeah.
that's really good. I mean, and you're right. Your points about the black community in the U.S. not only a big driver for culture in the U.S. I mean, the world, right? I mean, like
Hmm.
it's huge, and investing in that um, is going to pay dividends. And 100% agree with you from the talent perspective. I mean, you look at the scouts in the Premier Leagues.
Hmm.
They're just looking for the best talent, regardless of where they're coming from, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I think the U.S. when it comes to soccer, almost every other sport, I think we have something similar, but soccer we don't, and we
Yeah.
have players, um, but there's definitely, like you mentioned, some undiscovered talent there that you've even played with, actually interacted with. So yeah, those are good. Um, our podcast, we get a lot of listeners on the marketing side of things, and 100% Fortune 500 companies are going to infuse soccer into their marketing or communications to tap into everything happening in the World Cup, the Women's World
Yeah.
Cup, Olympics. What's a mistake that you keep seeing brands make when they integrate soccer into or soccer culture into the market into their marketing? And I'm talking about U.S. brands.
Yeah. Hmm.
Or
One
maybe
thing
not
that
a mistake. What should brands think about when integrating soccer into their marketing?
one thing that pops to mind immediately is some brands just will come for a moment and not do anything else. Like they see the World Cup coming and they'll make a scramble at the end to put something together. But there's just soccer is a year-round sport. There's always something going on, and if you're just invested into the moment, you don't really seem authentic to the audience that you may be wanting to reach just because you're only coming in at the biggest moment versus kind of having a sustainable investment all throughout. So I would love to see brands really just invest into the sport because it's growing, it's going to continue to grow. Like we talked about the big events that are coming after 2026. So just really having a strategic mindset to where maybe you start at the World Cup, but maybe there's stuff you can do beforehand, or maybe you have a 3 year plan versus just a 1 to 3 month thing that you want to do just to kind of get the attention around it. So I would say for brands to really think strategically, but also think long term and not just for short moments around the game.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I've given that advice like for Heritage Months, right? Black History Month.
Hmm.
Hispanic Heritage Month. It's like brands don't do anything all year and just do this one thing. Same thing goes. If you're really trying to make long-term growth, you got to invest. You got to invest over time. And I feel like with soccer and soccer fandom, probably some of the most loyal consumers. If you can figure out a way to do that,
Hmm.
you have super loyal consumers and soccer fans.
100%. We also have a very desirable audience too. There's a very young audience, a very diverse audience, very strong numbers in terms of female and male representation. So I mean, it's all the factors that brands want are there. So I think they just need to really do the research, but also kind of just come together around, as you mentioned, it's not just being there for a moment, like Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Month. Really, how do you build and invest in these communities year round? Because it should pay off if you have that right mindset coming into it.
That's a great point. Like soccer is kind of representative of the future of America, right? It's
Hmm.
young, it's diverse, it's inclusive. Um, yeah, that's an ideal consumers for brands that are thinking beyond the next 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, right?
Yeah.
That's a
Hmm.
really good point. Believe it or not, Patrick, we're at our time. But one kind of fun thing I have at the end is I ask guests if there's any books they're reading, podcasts, maybe things that they're binging on TV that's inspired you lately. Can be sports related, business related, or just for fun. Anything you want to share with your audience that are listening.
Let me think. I wouldn't say it's a book or a podcast, but more so just like a brand I follow. Not in the soccer space, but they're really just kind of a general sports apparel brand called Actively Black. But I just love the way that they really are trying to challenge just the different brands like the Nikes, the Adidas, and really kind of have a leading say so in terms of Black culture, sports, and how do you kind of merge the two, but also paying homage to the history of just all the things that we've done culturally. Like they are very outspoken in terms of how they communicate, in terms of how Black people are the drivers of culture, but oftentimes that culture is just being, I guess, cherry picked or kind of just used to drive bigger brands, but not really reinvesting into the community that you're actually profiting from. So I just love their positioning and just like to kind of pay attention to like different articles or releases that they have, just because of it kind of inspires some of the stuff that we do as well with Black Star. So I'll say that's something that I pay
Cool.
attention
Are,
to.
are they
Yeah.
like an apparel brand or a media brand or both?
Yeah, they're an apparel brand.
Okay, very cool. Actively Black. I'll have to
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah. And I believe the founder is based in the LA area. But yeah, he's a former basketball player, transitions, kind of started his own thing, but it's just he has a cool stories and a cool brand. So pay
All right.
attention to them.
I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to hit him up maybe to be on the podcast.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Cool. Patrick, awesome. Thank you so much for being on and talking about your background and you got me excited for World Cup and soccer in the future here. If people want to connect with you online, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm definitely on LinkedIn. I forgot what my specific username is, but you can find me there. If you just start search my name, my title, or for soccer, I'm there. I'm on Instagram, and then yeah, those are probably the two best places online.
Awesome. Patrick, thanks for joining and thank you everybody for listening.
Thanks for the time, Mari. It's been cool.